By the spring of 1945, the war in Europe had ground to an end. Cities lay in rubble. Millions of soldiers returned to homes that no longer felt like home. For many German veterans who had endured the long years on the Eastern Front, the silence after surrender brought its own kind of emptiness. What came next for some of them is one of those documented threads in history that still stops you cold when you come across it. While Europe tried to rebuild, France found itself stretched thin halfway around the world. Its hold on Indochina, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia was slipping. Nationalist forces were gaining strength, and French commanders needed men who could fight. They turned to the French Foreign Legion. The Legion had always taken men from many nations and given them a chance to begin again. In the years right after the war, it took in large numbers of Germans. Contemporary reports, including one in the New York Times from 1947, described units in Indochina where Germans made up as much as 80%. Overall, historians place the total number of German legionnaires who served there between roughly 30,000 and 50,000 during the 8-year conflict. Many arrived through a simple, direct process. A man would travel to a Legion depot in France. He would stand at the gate and ask to enlist. There were medical checks and basic questions, but the Legion's tradition of anonymity, the anonymat, meant a new identity came with acceptance. Old records stayed behind. For former Waffen-SS soldiers, the blood group tattoo under the left arm created an official barrier. Yet in the urgent need for experienced fighters, several thousand still found their way in. Estimates run from 3,000 to 4,000 out of the larger German contingent. These were men who had known little except combat for years. Now they faced a choice between uncertain civilian life in a defeated country and continued service under a different flag. The full picture of how that decision played out across continents is worth following closely. If this kind of history holds your interest, consider subscribing to this channel. There's more where this came from. Thank you. Once accepted, recruits entered several weeks of selection and training. The pace was demanding. Long marches, weapons drill, conditioning. Many of the Germans, already seasoned by the Eastern Front and later fighting, moved through it with practiced steadiness. Then came the sea journey to Indochina. Weeks aboard ship, crossing from the familiar ruins of Europe toward a war in an entirely different landscape. What awaited them was no continuation of the set-piece battles they had known. The Eastern Front had meant vast open spaces, tank clashes, and artillery that shook the ground for miles. In Vietnam, the war felt close and personal. Jungles so dense that visibility ended a few yards ahead. Trails that turned to mud under monsoon rains. An enemy that chose its moments, struck from cover, and disappeared again. The German legionnaires adapted. Their experience with hardship and discipline made them valuable. Many took on roles as non-commissioned officers, leading patrols, manning outposts, and holding positions through long nights. It was not about old loyalties. It was about the practical realities of men trying to make sense of lives that had been upended twice in a decade. The story reached its most intense point in the spring of 1954 at Dien Bien Phu. French command established a base in a remote valley, expecting to draw the Viet Minh into a conventional engagement they could win. Instead, General Giap's forces encircled the position, moved heavy guns into the hills despite the terrain, and turned the valley into a siege. Hundreds of foreign legionnaires, including many Germans, formed part of the defense. Units such as the 1st Foreign Parachute Battalion fought through weeks of constant pressure, artillery fire, dwindling supplies, exhaustion, and disease. The position held until May 7th, when it finally fell. That defeat marked the effective end of French colonial presence in Indochina and shaped much of what followed in the region. For the veterans who had started their military lives years earlier on the Eastern Front, it was another chapter written far from where it began. These men lived through one of history's stranger documented passages. Defeated soldiers from a lost cause found a way forward in the ranks of a former adversary, carrying their skills into a new conflict on the other side of the world. Some sought steady pay and structure. Others simply kept doing what they knew after everything else had been taken from them. Their story adds a human layer to what many of us already understand about the long reach of the Second World War and the conflicts that followed. It shows how the end of one war did not always mean peace for the men who fought it. Empires shifted, lives continued under new banners, and history moved forward in ways that still surprise us decades later. That's the quiet power in remembering these connections.